satisfactions?
Mixed. Really proud of where we've come from and what we've done and what we've achieved as a group. Still very disappointed about the Argentinian result. I thought it was a game, particularly in the first half, 10-0 up. We probably should have put them away. We've missed 3 points, which you'd normally expect that to sort of go, so that would have potentially taken us up to 13 points. But I don't want to take anything away from Argentina. I mean, they're a tough team to put away, and probably the game management was a little bit better than us. With times, I think, tried to play a little bit too much rugby. If you look at the kicking stats, they've outkicked us. They've kicked almost double the length of kicks that we had in terms of just playing a territory game. But in saying that, we created opportunities. We missed a few line-outs, and there was a few other chances that we could have scored. Probably a few too many turnovers for us in the game as well. So, disappointing, because I thought the way that we had progressed during that tournament and where we were going and the confidence that we were creating, and we just didn't quite match it against each other, against Argentina. But probably in reflection, that's where we are at the moment. I think we've seen a lot of progress. We've seen where we can potentially get to, but we're not there, and we've got a group of players and a group of young players to hopefully to continue to work with, to give them more experience, more international experience, and they'll get better from that.
How long does that pain sort of last?
For me?
Yeah.
It'll take a little bit of time, yeah. I'm kind of one of those people, I don't actually, whether we win or lose, I tend to be all right after a game, or the next day. It's probably 2 or 3 days later that I start to feel either the elation or the disappointment. So it's one that slipped up from us. And when you look, ironically, it could have been the same 4 teams from the last World Cup. It could have been in the semi-finals. So we did have a chance, but we weren't there. Probably the number of turnovers and stuff that we made and things, it probably didn't help. But like I said, that'll be something that we'll go and when we come back with a group of players and review that, what are the learnings from that? Because you tend to take so much more learnings from games of disappointment to get better as a squad. And I think for us, the benchmark of how to control a game and manage a game was definitely against Australia. I thought we were outstanding in that performance, and that's kind of what we want to. How do we get to a situation where we're consistent with those sorts of games against quality sides?
You were straight after the game, it's probably quite raw. What next for you? Is he wants it to steam on the next 4 years?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was asked about that. I didn't know it was in my contract. I just had a bit of a joke with Nigel before. I said, you can't get rid of me, because I think my contract said that if we didn't get out of the pool, they had a clause that they could get rid of me. So, but I did say, if you do want to pay me off, that's up to you. So
I haven't brought my checkbook.
yeah, I'm excited about what we can start doing as a group. We've got an opportunity to bring some youngsters come in and going forward to build on the next cycle. We get into 27 with players that have got 50, 60, 70 caps behind them. I think there's an opportunity for us to build some closer relationships with the regions, and some of the changes of coaches and personnel there, and I'm excited about that. That hasn't always been the case in the past. That often those relationships have been quite fractured, not from a coaching perspective, but because sometimes there was the things that were going on between the regions and the unions, and we got sort of dragged into those sorts of things. So I think that's encouraging, and it's really encouraging for us to hopefully get on the same page. We're dealing mainly with and working with the same players, so we've shown that we can improve. We've shown as a group of players that we've got an opportunity to play at a higher level, and we want to work with them and encourage them to do that, and to keep building to build confidence from that, going back to the regions, because it's going to be incredibly important for us in terms of keeping players in Wales and players wanting to be a part of something with their regions, but also want to play international rugby. And I've had a few conversations with players whose contracts are up, and I'm saying to them that I think the best thing for them going forward is, in the development of their game, is to stay in Wales, that they can be looked after to get the best possible out of them in terms of playing international rugby. But in order to do that, we've also got to make sure that we're progressing and performing at regional level too.
So, 4-year cycle, you'd like to take Wales to the 2027 World Cup?
Yeah, that's a plan at the moment. I think that when you look at it, we've got such a small playing base, and like I said, we've got to look at how do we bring these youngsters on, how do we continue to develop the Sam Costello and players like Tane Plumtree, who wasn't in the squad, and Jack Morgan, who I thought was outstanding. He would have learned a lot from his leadership role and stuff. And Aaron Wainwright's still a youngster at 25 as well. We've got some exciting second rows coming through, and some exciting backs as well. So when you look at the potential of what we've got as a nucleus at the moment, but I think some young players coming through, players that have been in the 20s, and hopefully some of those youngsters get opportunities and perform well for the region. So I think we can be really excited about what we can achieve over the next 3 or 4 years.
Nigel, how encouraging is it to see someone like Wallace who wants to be here to 2027? You made thoughts when before the World Cup about what you think as well as a coach.
Well, to be successful in international sport, any sport, you have to have good coaches, and you have to have good players, good sports people. To be a good coach, you need experience, miles on the clock. You need to understand your craft. You need to be able to get your message across to players, and players have to trust you. You heard what I said in August. Nothing's changed. You wouldn't expect anything to have changed. And you've seen the growth in the squad in a relatively small period of time. I, like Warren, am really excited about what the next 4 years can bring. Not just about the 30-odd players who were out in France, or the 50-odd who were part of the longer squad training in Turkey and Switzerland, but what we can do across the whole of Welsh rugby. And Warren's already alluded to the closer working relationship with the regions. We spent a day in this room a few months ago. We're going to spend another day together, and we're going to work both officially and unofficially to grow the game in Wales. We know there are challenging times. I'm not going to hark on about that. There are challenging times over the next year or two. But it's about making the most of the resource you've got. All those young players who are currently 18, 19, 20, 21, we were just talking about the squad, the number of 22, 23, 24-year-olds who perform with distinction in France. We've got something to build on here. And we're not saying anything ridiculous about what we're going to do over the next 2, 3 or 4 years. But we know we can grow the standard of the squad to an even greater level than we saw over the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Just on that one, we've shown what you can do with the squad over 3-4 months, every day, working to them. They now go back to their regions after the bar buzzing. You have them for 2 weeks. How do you make sure that things don't regress, or you don't have that sort of same time that you would have during those tournaments?
Yeah, that's always the challenge, and I would encourage the players that have been in with us to go back with a strong voice about the things that they've learnt. I've always encouraged that in the past as a coach, even when I was coaching up in Wasps, when the English players would come back to us, what things have you learned, what things can you bring into our environment to make us better as a group, and that can work both ways as well. So when things are working really well at a region and a player comes with an idea and this is what we've been doing, we're more than comfortable to implement that into our pathway or into our program. So those are the sorts of things that I think need to be. We all have to be comfortable with those sorts of things. That learning that it's not just about me or the head coaches at the regions. It's about a collective responsibility about how we can all get better, how we can all have an input to make sure that those sorts of things happen. And when you consider, and maybe that we weren't quite ready for a quarter final. There's not a lot of players in the squad that have been a part of knockout football, and the more regular opportunities you have being part of quarterfinals and semi-finals, then you get more comfortable with that. So we're starting from a relatively low base at the moment, but I think everyone's well aware we've got to have a significant amount of improvement in the whole game here in Wales if we're going to be successful. And that's not about. It's not always about winning everything. It's about potentially overachieving. We probably, like I said, we're disappointed we didn't get to semi-finals, and that would have been a great achievement for us. We've been satisfactory. We've won our pool, and that's been a big improvement. But we're not satisfied with that. And again, I think the regions have to be ambitious about putting in the hard work and getting better and making playoff stages to continue to develop their players. Yeah, which is something we'll talk about with the backroom staff that I've got at the moment. Sort of kind of everyone's on different cycles, so it's about sitting down with them and talking with them and talking with Nigel and the union about how we potentially go forward and getting people on those same sort of contract cycles. I can say that I've seen a huge amount of growth in the staff from the Six Nations, the amount of work and effort that they've put in, what they've learned as coaches, and probably the relationship that we've developed over the last 4 or 5 months. That's been extremely positive, and I think we can see that in some of the performances of the side that coaches have got much more comfortable in sort of this pressure cooker environment, but also having that time to work with the players.
What players will be available for Barbar's game? Is it the regional players from the Wales squad and not English and French? Is that the sort of region that I don't play with you?
Yeah, we'll probably pick the squad out of that original 54 that we had available. Obviously, the French and English players aren't available, so we're at the moment. We've had players being scanned sort of yesterday and today. I spoke to Prav Mathema this morning and I'll get a final follow-up from him this evening. We'll name a squad tomorrow, so we're going to have to bring in a couple of tight heads. Whether that's probably the names off the top of my head at the moment, but probably Kieran Azarati and Leon Lloyd, a couple of second rows. Sorry, Leon Brown, not Leon Lloyd. He wouldn't be any good in the front row, would he? Leon Brown. And just so we picked up a few injuries last weekend. If we were to play this weekend, we wouldn't have had Liam Williams, Lewis Rees-Sammet, Josh Adams, Gareth Davies, Dan Bigger wouldn't have been fit and available for this weekend. So that would have been a bit of a challenge, but it would have been an exciting challenge. So there's a number of the squad in France who will be available. We will add a few more names. So whether that squad's 23, 24 or 25, we won't be picking a full squad, because I think there's a chance for some of the players who were in France who didn't get a lot of rugby maybe to go back and play for their regions, and also by not picking a big squad, it allows the regions to perhaps operate a bit more effectively. So that's a part of the thing that we know it's a game that's there. We know it's a celebration game, and there's a lot of talk about Alvin Jones and stuff, and maybe for some players it might be their last hit out for Wales also. But we also don't want to jeopardise as much as we can in terms of helping the regions by not taking too many of their players away.
Can you just give one word on Alvin Jones? You mentioned the celebration game, what he's done over the years, and wins this match, and what he's done in his career.
Yeah, look, he was here before me, so obviously he's been an unbelievable servant for Welsh rugby and was achieved in the game. I think it's probably his biggest strength's been his mental application. He was a player who never knew when to go up. He never knew when to stop. And when he was at his best, he led by example, not just in the way that he played, but also in trainings and demanded stuff. And I think there was a large group of players who would have learned a huge amount from him, and that's for us as a group is developing those sort of the next Alan Wins who can do the same sort of thing when youngsters come in the squad. This is how you prepare, this is how you train, these are the expectations. When you put the jersey on, what it means. I can remember I go around the change rooms before games and shake everyone's hands and wish them all the best, and he used to shake for every game. And it must have been a hell of a lot of games. I'd shake his hand, and he would always say to me, "Thanks for the opportunity," because he never took it for granted. And I kind of went, that's what it means for him to play for Wales.
Warren, you've got a few over 30-year-olds, not that many, but how do you manage the process with the more experienced players over the next few years in terms of bringing in the youth, balancing the experience you've got?
Yeah, it's looking at that age profile, and you're looking at 2027, who in your mind you think is definitely not going to get there. Are there one and two that might be part of the transition, helping bring some of the youngsters through because they've got that experience over the next 12 months or so. So, yeah, that's going to be a balancing act for us. I have spoken with some of those older players within the group about what their plans are and where they see themselves over the next couple of years. Some of them continue to want to play regional rugby and still be available. So it's just kind of making sure that we have honest and open conversations about what's going to happen, and then that potentially is going to happen over the next few months. Sitting down, I spoke to Lupe before he left France, and I just get that arm fixed, and when that's here, we'll sit down and talk about what you want to do over the next few years in terms of your playing. So just making sure that we get it right. We're aware that we need to give those youngsters opportunity. They need time in the middle. They need to develop that experience, and I don't want to be leaving some of them with not playing a lot of international rugby over the next couple of years, and then trying to get them up to speed in a short period. So that's something there'll be some hopefully positive discussions around how we do that. But like I said, every individual is going to be treated a little bit differently.
You'll be an interested observer over the next couple of weeks. What do you think will be happening in France?
Yeah, I think for all those teams involved in the quarterfinals, it was a huge amount of emotional expenditure. There was a lot of emotional pressure in terms of how big those 4 games were. Probably to me, the team that slipped under the radar a little bit's probably been England. They probably haven't played as well as, even in the warm-up games, as well as they would have liked. But sometimes, and when you look at their age profile and the experience that they've got, they can be dangerous when it comes to big matches because they've got that experience of the past, and often teams, like I said, are a little bit older can pull a big one out of the bag, and I think they're going to be a hard, tough proposition to knock over this week. And in terms of South Africa, they'll be hurting from what happened in 2019, and the All Blacks, Argentina, that'll be another challenging game as well. So I enjoyed the quarterfinals apart from the one that I was involved in. So I thought they were good games of rugby, and I feel from the crowd perspective and the things that happened in France, it was a hugely positive tournament. I thought the crowds were absolutely amazing. The fans were brilliant. The messaging that we were getting, the support we had from the Wales fans was outstanding, and that for me made it really special.
And Nigel, we know about the sort of natural downsides of Welsh rugby, but in terms of that development of the younger players, are you getting a feeling there's maybe more cooperation going on? There is an opportunity in that?
There is definitely more cooperation going on. We all know that we have to work more closely together. It's not Team Wales or the regions, it's got to be Team Wales and the regions. From a Team Wales point of view, we know where the players come from, it's common sense. and we've got to do everything we can to support the regions in identifying those players, in developing those players, and getting them up to speed for international rugby as quickly as possible. To do that, we need to make sure that the academies are working as effectively and as efficiently as they can be, and there's a special section in the PRA on the academies, and we're going to be following that through, working with the regions really closely to make sure that our 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds are fit for purpose as quickly as their talent allows. So I am optimistic. We saw over the weekend the standard of international rugby is incredibly high. Like Warren, I didn't enjoy one of the quarterfinals quite as much as I did the other three. But if we talk about the other three, there was some quality rugby played there, and that's what we've got to aspire to, be able to play that rugby international after international after international, and make those, those split-second decisions, the right decisions, so you come out on the right side of the ledger at the end of it. We lost the game, and it's not my place to talk about rugby, it's Warren's place to talk about rugby. We lost the game. But if we'd made one or two different decisions, we could have won that game and we could have been preparing for the semi-final. And a lot of that is about experience and about being in the heat of battle and making those right decisions at the right time. But in order to do that, we have to prepare our players properly at regional level and give them that international exposure. But I'm excited about the future.
Over the last 15 years, Warren's often picked out younger players ahead of the regions, giving them more opportunities than the regions have done. Are you going to have the opportunity to maybe accelerate that process within the region?
Yeah, that's kind of, as in the past, been a little bit frustrating because we've identified some talent and the ironic thing, we've used the international stage to develop them. I think things have changed. I think in the past there was a lot more foreign players and experienced foreign players in the regions. The number of foreign players have definitely come down. I think the salary cap and everyone having to be conscious of the amount of money spent on players to keep within budgets. I think it's a positive for the younger players. I think it's going to mean that those younger players are going to get chances and opportunities in their regions. And I thought there was a cycle that we went through for a number of years where we had what I thought sort of some talented players coming out of the 20s, and then they would be in the regional program and they weren't quite ready for regional rugby. And sometimes that's the pressure of performance and results, and coaches feel those sorts of pressures, so you don't end up giving a youngster an opportunity. And so, he becomes 21 and then he's 22 and 23 and he's had half a dozen, 10 or 12, 15 games. His agent would come and knock on the door saying his contract's up, we're looking for a little bit more money, and the unfortunate thing, so we're not recontracting you, and they'd go to another 19 or 20-year-old. And we saw that cycle for a long time, where those players weren't getting the chances, and hopefully the position where we're in now, and we need, I think, the regions, from a positive point of view, from my point of view, is that some of those youngsters are going to get those chances at regional rugby. Have they got talent? Yes. Are they going to make some mistakes? Do you have to go through some pain with them? Absolutely. But I'd often see, and my biggest argument was that we were sometimes signing 27 or 28-year-olds that had overseas experience, maybe provincial rugby or super rugby, and who were better than those youngsters at the time. And as a result, we didn't see some of that development. But those are some of the things that I've spoken about in the past, but I think we're in a position now, like I said, with not anywhere near as many foreign players, and our regions probably having to be more proactive and actually having to develop those youngsters. I think I'd like to see them come through, play regional rugby that we identify and see their talent, and then can bring them through to the national side.
Okay, so we've got time for a few more. So we'll go Alex, Steph, Tyrion, and then...
Sorry.
Okay.
Hi, Warren. You touched on the games in Paris. I thought they were amazing matches. Did they set a new standard for you, do you think, in terms of physicality and intensity? And can Wales maybe get to that level in your opinion? Yeah,
that's got to be our challenge. I think that's what we've prided ourselves on the past. I think we've made a huge amount of progress, and you've seen pretty experienced teams, other teams in those quarterfinals. We've seen a South African team that a lot of those players were involved in 2019, and a lot of the players from England. The All Blacks have always been one of the benchmarks of a team being able to play and perform, and we've seen the development and rise of Irish rugby over the few years. But they'll all go through quite significant transitions after this World Cup, and if you look at the Irish team, there's a significant number of those players who are not going to be there in 2027. Is when they make the change. Does Andy Farrell keep with them for another year or two, or does he start thinking about youngsters coming through? South Africa are going to go through that sort of same process. Yeah, they've got some young exciting backs, but they've also got an ageing team as well. The All Blacks are going to lose a lot of players that have made commitments to leave and go to France or to Japan, so they'll be in a new cycle. And we're similar as well. So England, definitely the same. So there's probably a number of teams that have that are in the same sort of position that we'll be in going through the next period. So we've got to be prepared to work hard. We've got to be prepared to get those players up to speed as quickly as we possibly can, so that when we do come up against those sorts of teams and those big occasions, that we're ready for it.
And one of the themes of the World Cup was the Tier 2 nations and the future of how they're going to go. Would you, as Wales coach, welcome the chance to play against them?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought one of the teams of the tournament was Portugal. I thought the way they played, they were absolutely outstanding. A lot of players are coming from the Sevens program. They've obviously benefit hugely on that in terms of the way that they move the ball, but they were a tough team, and everyone, I think, realised afterwards actually that was the pool that we're in was actually a pretty even pool when you look at it. In Georgia, the score that we had against Georgia was the biggest amount of points that they'd had on them since the last World Cup in 2019. So they just need to play more rugby at a higher level. And even the Uruguay game against the All Blacks, that's 0-0 after 20 minutes. So we can see what those teams can do when they're pumped up, the adrenaline's there, and they're able to go. But the unfortunate thing is that they're not able to sustain it at the moment for long periods, through that sort of 60, 70, 80 minute time. So they just need the chance to play against the best, and that was the thing. I can remember when I first came to Wales and I was asked by Roger Lewis, who do you want to play? And I just said, anytime you can get an opportunity to play the Southern Hemisphere, I don't care if it's All Blacks or South Africa, let's just jump at that chance, because the only way we're going to get better is by playing against the best. And I think that World Rugby does have that responsibility to grow the game, and maybe we all need to be a little open-minded about what happens in the future in terms of the Six Nations. Can that grow a little bit, or how do we potentially run that tier 2 Six Nations with the possibility of promotion or relegation going forward? I know there's a lot of jeopardy involved in that and a lot of money involved in that, but if we're not ambitious about growing the game, then we're going to continue to have those top teams probably dominating, and we want the game. From me as a sports fan, you want to see upsets, and we've seen that. We're watching a bit of the Cricket World Cup, and we saw with the Netherlands beating South Africa yesterday and Afghanistan beating England, and that's been a process where they've started to be, because of the regular fixtures they've started to have against those big nations. We've seen their development over the few years, and I think we need to sort of, in some way follow the same sort of model to keep developing those tier 2 nations.
Okay, we've got time for 2 more, so we'll do the 2 there, and then that'll be it.
Warren, in terms of your succession planning to the next World Cup, are there any specific positions where you think the cover's a bit bare and you need to maybe strengthen, maybe look at the exercise programme? Are there any positions you really sort of...
Yeah, we probably haven't got a lot at 10 at the moment, a lot of experience. We're really excited we saw a huge amount of growth in Sam Costello in the last number of months. We think he's going to be an outstanding international player. He's still got a lot of learnings to do, but the amount of work that he put on his game, worked on his game in South Africa, I was not in South Africa, in France, I was really, really impressed with him. I think he's going to continue to. He kind of understands now what's required to be an international player, how much work you've got to go in, not just with your passing game, but your kicking game, just your little drills and skills and staying square and those sorts of things, your communication, how important those sorts of things. So we're probably a little bit bare at finding some 10s, and we need to find some 10s who can fill their role, and hopefully we'll see some exciting talent, potentially come through from the regions, and we might need to throw them in at the deep end international level to expose them earlier rather than later. So those are sorts of things that we're potentially thinking about. And then probably the other one is fullback. Just that we've had two pretty outstanding fullbacks in the last number of years, and Lee Halfpenny and Liam Williams, and we've got to find, Lewis Rees-Zammit can go there. That's an option for us. So probably looking for real quality in that back three. Rio Dyer for me has been again another player. I've just seen an unbelievable growth in him in the last 12 months, which has been fantastic. I thought it was great when he came on the weekend, and again the amount of work that he's done in terms of learning from his game has been brilliant. Where he was someone who was playing international, who was so green, he was learning game by game. But I've seen, I'd like to see that. I've seen that progression in him, not just as a rugby player, but as a professional athlete, and knowing what's required. And I think, he's definitely one we're excited about for the future. But we've got to find more players like that.
Okay, and we'll finish up with Gwennon from ITV.
Some would say you had a disappointing World Cup, but others would say you actually did better than expected. What are your thoughts on that?
Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Okay, and looking forward to the Six Nations then, you'll be without some of your key players. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's, again, we've tended in the past, have built on that time that we've had together in World Cups, and have gone into the Six Nations with that confidence because of all the hard work that we've done. And so I think hopefully we know this is going to be a little bit different, because there's a number of players that are not going to be available to us post this World Cup, with either retirements or players going to Japan, those sorts of things, if we don't pick up too many injuries. But I think we can go into the Six Nations, like I said, with a lot of confidence about the learnings that we got from the World Cup, the good things that we did, and what things we need to continue to do to improve our game.
And just a quick question on the co-captaincy. Is that something that will continue, or was that just an experiment for the World Cup?
It was something that we felt at the time, with picking two young captains who would support each other, would be not just two young captains, but two quality men, and I thought they both did an outstanding job in terms of that role. We haven't thought further ahead of that. I thought Jack was absolutely outstanding. Probably one of the questions I asked myself afterwards in the last couple of days is, did we get the 6-7 combination right? That was quite a big debating point amongst us as coaches, and doing that. But particularly from Jack's point of view, I thought he was, if not he definitely is one of the best sevens in the World Cup, and we took him away from that and put him in that 6 role. So, but the sort of person he is, he was comfortable to do that. I saw some huge growth in him as a captain and as a player in the last 5 or 6 weeks, and I think him as a captain is only going to get better. And I thought it was a little bit tougher for Dewey in terms of starting one game and not probably having as much responsibility, but he was brilliant in terms of supporting that. So I haven't thought about, it was sort of for us, it fitted that for us at the right time. Having two youngsters that were respected by an older group of players who they supported, and that fitted for us in the World Cup. But it's the first time I've done that. Probably not in favour of doing that unless it's required again, so we probably will go back to the one captain scenario.
Okay, thank you very much everyone.